This is Portuguese, okay? What's the largest Portuguese-speaking country in the world?
Brazil.
Don't say Portugal. What? Brazil. And Tony has really put some effort into this. You can't just put a book together in a hurry. He has to check everything. And months have gone by. We want to print the first printing for 32,000 copies of Perfect Storm in Portuguese. Where does the figure 32,000 come in? Who's our friend that flies, and David Gates and others want to get into Brazil. And so when we can print the 32,000 Perfect Storm in Portuguese, that will be the initial step of getting into the country.
Well, he can take that many into.
This is brand new. I gave Tony some of the ideas for a new title. He decided Wise Words in Times of Foolishness. And this is the last half of Finding Peace Within, the question and answers. So what he has done is put together an 80-page publication that's on the question and answer section of Finding Peace Within.
It's like Bible studies.
This needs to be done.
It does.
Wise words in times of foolishness. I think I would be inclined to say wise words in time of idiocy or something. This is the clean, updated version of the Cuban Finding Peace Within. Really looks nice. He's done some artwork that I haven't seen before.
We really go with that.
The thing that's pressing us right now is we have ordered and have to pay for 75,000 Perfect Storm. We're out of Perfect Storm. The books continue to go out, and God continues to touch hearts, and that's what we're asking for. Well, we want to ask the Lord to intervene in behalf of our projects here. We need to keep working. We need the books to keep going out. Larry Petty had a chat with me this week, and he said, I've got 10,000 addresses. They're ready. Do you have the money? I said, we'll have to pray about it. Lord will have to send the money. The people paid for the addresses. Now let's pray to get the books out. 10,000 books, a lot of books. Out through the post office. I wanted to take you to the board for a moment and try to explain something that I'm hesitant to explain, but I'm going to try. 32 years ago, that was my chosen title for a seminar in Southern California, San Bernardino, as a matter of fact. June and Ivan were there. I gave the title to that series, Opening the Book of Daniel. I've been hesitant to go the next mile, the next step, but I'm going to try. So I'm going to give this discussion the title, Opening the Book of Daniel, again. Why is it that we're going to go again? Because there are things that couldn't be said 32 years ago, even if they were understood by one or two or one or whatever. Certain things could not be said, spoken, without turning people's minds away. They were not prepared for what we're going to talk about. I have a relatively straight line here that I'm going to call a timeline. There's a beginning, there's an end, there's a middle. The books of Daniel and Revelation are strange. That's the right word. They're strange. Why is that? Because God, centuries, actually millennia ago, revealed things first to Daniel, 700 years later to John, the youngest of the 12 disciples, the last living. God revealed to Daniel 3,000 years ago, and God revealed to John 2,000 years ago. Both of the books claim to have mysteries or possess mysterious information. As a matter of fact, we could even use the word secret. When you hear the word secret, what do you think of? Somebody's not telling somebody something, right? Daniel, 500-600 years BC, is receiving information from God. And he is told repeatedly that it has to do with the time of the end. We'll look at this in just a minute, but he's told repeatedly it has to do with the time of the end. And what is Daniel's response to these various visions and dreams given to the kings and given to him and whatever? What is Daniel's quandary? He says, what is this all about? And repeatedly, he is told, repeatedly, at the beginning, in the middle, at the end, that this is about the time of the end. Well, how long will it be till the time of the end arrives? That was Daniel's closing question to the mighty angel. How long will it be till the end? This is the answer from him. It's not for you to know. Was Daniel happy about that? Was Daniel somewhat perplexed and puzzled about, you give me all this information and then you tell me it's not for me? That's what we call secret information. So we come to John in the book of Revelation 700 years down the road. 700 years later, John is receiving visions, which if you check, match the visions of Daniel to a point of enlargement. So Daniel gets almost to the end of his visions or dreams. And he says, I heard, and I was about to write it down, and a voice from heaven says, don't write it down. That's what we would call a secret. Secret. Why does God want certain information hidden? And he's wanted to hide it for a long time. I mean, there's 700 years between Daniel and John. And they're not the only persons who have been struggling with this business of, you told us this, let's have Moses and Aaron. What?
The Lord made alternate arrangements.
Please don't misunderstand what I'm saying, but it is perplexing to have Moses and Aaron go through the motions with Pharaoh in Egypt and the children of Israel in Egypt, and he's going to lead them out, and they're going to the promised land. How many of the people that left finally arrived in the promised land? It's beyond secret and mysterious. How many times and how many generations has God said, do this, and given the idea that this is an act of finality. This is something that has to be done before the end can come. And over and over and over again, God works through generation after generation after generation. And so it is mysterious but understandable that in each of these generations, people thought they were going to heaven. Listen, they thought the end had come. They thought heaven was at the door. When John the Baptist started preaching to the multitudes, they believed that the kingdom of heaven was at hand. That's what John preached. That's what Jesus preached. That's what Jesus told his disciples to preach. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. How long has it been since then? 2,000 years plus. What is God doing? Hiding the time, giving the time, but hiding, making it mysterious and not completely understood. Why would God hide the time? If you were part of this group who left Egypt and stepped by painful step through the desert, 40 years instead of 40 days, would you be perplexed? Would you have I won't say angry response, but would you be wondering, what is God doing? What was the response of the people who were following Moses and Aaron? Moses, you brought us out here to die. Did they die in the desert? Yes, they did. Were Moses and Aaron perplexed? Yes, they were. When they got to the promised land, and by the way, I've been there in person, standing on the mount across Mount Nebo, is it? I've been there, stood there where Moses and Aaron and the children of Israel stood. Who was leading Joshua at the time? I've stood right there, and you can see all the way across the Jordan River Valley to Jerusalem on the other side, 30, 40 miles away. It's an amazing experience. We had two young Arab boys who they were always, you want, I tell you. You're looking for something, I tell you. I asked this one young fellow, I said, where? You know English? Yeah, a little bit. He must have been 10 or 12 years old. I said, where is the spring of Moses? Ah, Wadi Musa. The spring of Moses. And this was very important by the time the children of Israel got on top of the mountain, getting ready to cross Jordan and meet Jericho and all of this kind of thing. Wadi Musa. And we were standing on top of the mountain and looking down across several valleys where the hills would come together and part. And I said to this young fellow, where is Point Wadi Musa? And he took me over to the edge of the mountain, and he pointed down like this, and you had to wait a minute till you could see a little bit of green in the desert. And that was the spring of Moses. Very interesting experience, but it bears witness to the fact that people have been believing the end was coming a long time, folks, long time. Yet we get the idea that when the end does come, it will come quickly. But if it takes 6 or 7 years, that's not quickly in my book, but in thousands of years of human history, 6 or 7 years, if that's the time of the end, that's quickly. We want to talk about some of this. So I'm going to go to the board again and ask you some simple questions. This is the beginning, and this is the ending. Which is more important, or which is most important? The beginning of the revelation or the end of the revelation? Come on. Which is more important, the beginning or the end? The end, absolutely. Especially when the end is several thousand years coming along. The end is the most important. Boy, that is terrible. Let's make it terrible again. A secret. Which part of the book of Daniel is secret or was secret? When Daniel got to the end, chapter 12, he has a vision. He sees the mighty angel Michael standing above earth and sea, hands lifted toward heaven, and crying with a loud voice that time should be no longer, it says in Revelation, about this same event, same posture, same persons in the vision. There should be time no longer. So I want to position the sun over here and the moon. And the moon doesn't really belong to the sun. It does, but it doesn't really. The moon belongs to the earth, which is here. This is one of 8 or 9 planets. We are one of 8 or 9 planets. And we want to talk about what Jesus said in chapter 5 of Matthew. I'm telling you this. He said, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will stand forever. Heaven and earth will pass away. I'm going to mention to you Isaiah 24. Would you take a moment and let's look at it? Verse 1, Isaiah 24. Behold, the Lord makes the earth empty, makes it waste, turns it upside down and scatters abroad the inhabitants. As it shall be with the people, so with the priest, as with the servant, so with the master, so with the maid, so with the mistress, so with the buyer, so with the seller, so with the lender. In other words, there's no one who is going to escape this time when the time comes. Verse 3, the land shall be utterly emptied, utterly spoiled, for the Lord has spoken this word. The earth mourns and fades away. The world languishes and fades away. The haughty people of the earth do languish. The earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore hath the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men left. Let's talk about this burning business. Now Jesus says the sun and the moon are going to pass away. In other words, they're going to be moved out of their places, their position. Where are they going to go? For 1,000 years, the sun and earth and moon are going to be moved out of their places. Where are they going to go? Only God knows where they're going to stop or where they're going to come to rest. But for 1,000 years, the earth is going to be emptied of life, emptied of people, emptied of, if you keep reading in Isaiah 24. Let me get over here just a few verses. I'm going to start with verse 17 in Isaiah 24. Fear and the pit and the snare are upon thee, O inhabitant of the earth. It shall come to pass that he who flees from the noise of the fear shall fall into the pit. He that comes up out of the midst of the pit shall be taken in the snare. For the windows from on high are open, and the foundations of the earth do shake. The earth is utterly broken down. The earth is clean dissolved. The earth is moved exceedingly. The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard, and be removed like a cottage. Transgression shall be heavy upon it, and it shall fall and not rise again. This always poses a bit of a quandary, a problem in a discussion like this, because Jesus in the Beatitudes says, the meek shall inherit the earth. But we have plain statements in Scripture by the prophets that the earth is going to be clean removed and all life is going to be erased. When the 1,000 years are accomplished and the wicked are there, and the time has come to put an end to the end, the lake of fire prepared for the devil and his angels is where some human beings are going to be thrown as well. 1,000 years, the earth is moving to some new place in the heavens, a place that God knows, a place that God has designed through the movements of heaven. 1,000 years, and then we come to a lake of fire. The idea is that everything is burned up. Everything is melted. That's the same story told in Revelation. Same story in Revelation chapter 6. The wicked see this fire coming in the heavens, and they are trying to hide themselves. They call for the rocks and mountains to fall on them and hide us from this coming terror. And the coming terror is the face of God, it says in Revelation 6. Hide us from the face of Him that is coming. So that's the Father and the Son, Jesus says, and Revelation agrees. The Father comes, the Son comes, and who else comes with them? Come on. All the angels, all the loyal angels in heaven are emptied and come to this occasion, this event. So at the end of the 1,000 years, and we don't know a date for that, at the end of the 1,000 years, the earth is going to be cleansed with fire. Then we can have a remake, and God can make what He has waited for, longed for, promised to come to pass. So let's come back here to this book of Daniel, 12 chapters. Look at Daniel chapter 1. Would you do that, please? And the end of Daniel chapter 1. I'm going to start in verse 18. The end of chapter 1, verse 18. Now at the end of the days that the king had said he should bring them in, the prince of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. The king communed with them, and among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers found in the realm. Verse 21. This is the hidden part. This is the mysterious part. This is the part that no one ever discusses. But it's at the beginning of the book of Daniel. So that verse says, Daniel continued even unto the first year of King Cyrus. Tell me about Cyrus.
Wasn't he the one that let the Jews go back?
Well, he was part of the process, but
Yeah, to Jerusalem.
Cyrus, the Median portion.
yes,
From Belshazzar.
when Belshazzar was coming to the end of his time, okay, Cyrus comes into the picture. So the first chapter and the last verse in the first chapter of the book of Daniel takes you all the way through the book of Daniel. So what do we find at the beginning of the book of Daniel? There's a beginning and there's an end. Book of Daniel, chapter 2, verse 38. Verse 26, this is Daniel's inquiry. The king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, art thou able to make known to me the dream which I have seen and the interpretation thereof? Verse 27, Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, the secret which the king hath demanded cannot the wise men, astrologers, magicians, and soothsayers show the king. But there is a God in heaven. This is Daniel talking to the king. There is a God in heaven that revealeth, here's our word, secrets, and makes known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Makes known to the king what shall be in the latter days. Verse 29, as for thee, O king, thy thoughts came into thy mind upon thy bed, what should come to pass hereafter? And he that revealeth secrets maketh known to thee what shall come to pass. Here we have Daniel chosen. We have Nebuchadnezzar chosen. And the subject matter, the revelation, the secret, has to do with the time of the end. At the beginning of the book, at the end of the book, chapter 12, time of the end. Let's go to Daniel 7 and 8. Verse 9. I watched or beheld till the thrones were cast down or set in place. The Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, the hair of his head like pure wool, his throne like fiery flame, his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld even till the beast was slain, his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. As concerning, verse 12, as concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. Who are the other beasts that are left alive when the fourth beast is given to the burning flame? The beast is given to the burning flame. But the other three are still alive. Tell me who the other three are. Not who they represent, but there's the lion, there's the bear, there's the leopard. The fourth beast is thrown into a burning lake of fire. And the first three are still around a little while. That's a mystery. It's solved if you keep reading. These great beasts, verse 17, which are four kings, which shall arise. Shall, is that future tense? Present tense, what? Future tense. Shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom, possess the kingdom, even forever and ever. And I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, teeth of iron, nails of brass. He devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with his feet. The remnant is a better word there. The 10 horns. Verse 21, I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them until the Ancient of Days came. That's what's being pictured here. Until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. That's chapter 7. If you'll notice, chapter 7 begins with the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, and chapter 8 begins with the third year of Belshazzar. So which comes first? The third or the first? So if you read the two, you'll see that 8 should have come first in subject matter. Chapter 8, verse 15, it came to pass when even I, Daniel, had seen the vision and sought for the meaning. We're talking about the vision. Behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man, and I heard a man's voice between the banks of Ulai, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man is supplied. Make Daniel understand the vision. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid and fell on my face. But he said, understand, O son of man, for at the time of the shall be the vision. Now the shall be is added, it's italicized. but that indicates future tense. Behold, I will make thee know, verse 19, what shall be in the last end of the indignation, for at the time appointed the end shall be. So here's a question. If you look at the book of Daniel, that's what we're talking about, 12 chapters. At the beginning of the book, is it about the time of the end? Yes. Does it say so? Yes. If you get through the middle of the book, it's about the time of the end? Yes. Does it say so? Yes. If we get to the end of the book, does it say the time of the end? And the answer is yes. Yes. Time of the end. So what does the time of the end mean to you and me? Would there have to be some understanding when this time comes? Some clarification? I'm trying to recall the experience in my senior year at SMC. But one of the questions was, why do we say this when it's not what the book says? And the answer was, well, we've been promised that one day these things will be made clear. One day these things will be understood. We're still waiting the one day, the one day, the one day. We're waiting for some clearer understanding of the time of the end. So, what does it mean to you and me? It would mean nothing unless we can identify the time of the end. So let's go to Matthew 24 and let's identify the time of the end. In whose words? Matthew 24. Verse 1, as Jesus went out, he departed from the temple. His disciples came to him to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said, do you see all these things? I'm telling you, there shall not be one stone left standing that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be? Listen to the question. When shall these things be? Meaning they haven't happened yet. And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? So what's the context? The end. So Jesus answered, verse 4, and said, take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. You're going to hear wars and rumors of wars, all these things. 15, yes. Let's get the context in 13, 14, and 15. But he that shall endure unto the end, we've got the placement again. The same shall be saved, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness to all nations. Then shall the end come. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whosoever reads, let him understand. People have been trying to understand these mysteries, the timing of the end, for generations and generations. And Jesus has set the time of the end in the book of Daniel. When you therefore shall see, spoken of by Daniel. There should be more study. I'm quoting Ellen White. More study should be given to the books of Daniel and the Revelation. So let me ask you, where do we, Adventist Christians, where do we place the fulfillment of Daniel? Where do we have the book of Daniel worked out? We have it worked out already. We've got all the dates, we've got all the centuries, we've got all the actors, we've got everything all worked out, and yet it's not the end. So there's a clearer, more perfect understanding to come. My question a while ago is the same. What does this mean to you and me? Is there some message? Is there some message that has to go to the world? What is the message? We come to the close of this little publication, And what do we have at the close? Right here. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, I will create new heavens and a new. Is it going to be another sun created? Possibly, but I don't think so. I think that there's going to be a repositioning in the heavens. Things are going to be on this planet. Things are going to be brought near enough the sun in this process of moving and restoring. Things are going to be brought near enough the sun that the sun is going to burn away all the fluff and all the dust and all the dirt and all the whatever. As a matter of fact, if you read about it in Revelation, the memory of these things will not even be brought to mind. The time is coming. It's going to be erased. Where do we come into the picture? The end cannot come, I'm quoting Jesus, the end cannot come until everyone hears the good news. What is the good news? This gospel of the kingdom shall be preached for a witness to all nations, then the end can come. How in the world can God speak to everybody on the planet in their language or languages? How can God get the message out? What do we have as a dress rehearsal in the book of Acts? How many languages were there? Can God speak one word here and they hear another word? That's what happened in the book of Acts, which is a precursor, which is a shadow, a promise of things to come. So God can, through the miracle working power of the Holy Spirit, speak to everybody on this rock at the same time. And they can hear it in their own. So what does this have to do with you and me and us and this little place? I was on Charlie B. Cox, Highway 145. I was coming back from wherever, working for the day, and I saw a home. This is not at dark. This is in the daylight. I saw a home that I hadn't really noticed before going up and down the Charlie B. Cox. And I decided I would pull over for a minute and knock on the door. I did that because I saw a vehicle in the driveway. Maybe someone is home. And this gentleman came to the door when I knocked. What can I do for you? I said, I'm with the Bible Story people. We leave the books in the doctor's offices. Don't need any. I said, well, everybody needs the Bible. Don't need any. I got a Bible. So we had this little banter for a couple of minutes, and I said, well, I sure would love to show you some of my books. I told you I don't need any books. I've got the Bible. That's all I need. Well, I understand, but I'd like to show you my books. Come on in. And he said, listen, there's very few people going to heaven. Very few people. I said, well, I've heard that before. Yeah, he said, well, you have to belong to the truth. You have to belong to the right church. This man's telling me this, and I'm listening. I'm not all ears, but almost. And he kept saying, this is the true church. I said, well, pardon me if I ask you, what church do you belong to? And he belonged to an independent Baptist church. And it was independent from the Baptist church. And he said, this is the truth. And very few people are going to be saved. I said, how many people belong to your church? He said, about 1,700. I said, that's not very many people going to heaven. Nope. What would you say to someone in those circumstances without being curt, without, trying to be smarty? What would you say to someone whose whole vision of heaven is maybe 1,700 people? You think Adventists think in small terms? You understand what I'm asking?
Well, a little bigger than that.
Lord, this person wants in. Shall I open the gate? Well, find out if he smokes first. Find out if he does this or believes that or is part of this. Find out if he paid tithe. Find out. And if he measures up, open the door and let him in. Who do you know that measures up? Who do you know? There's only been one to date who measures up. But that won't work. There has to be at least 2 witnesses. Has to be at least 2. And we'll take more. So God is going to produce a people. I'm quoting Ellen White. God is going to produce a people in that day. How does he do that? Find out who belongs to this church, this denomination, and believes this. And let's make the list here and we check them out. It's kind of like your Christmas list. I'm looking for big things to happen at the time of the end. Big things, large things, great things, fearful things. Many things are going to happen. You and I may be here during this time. We may not be. I don't know. They keep kicking the can down the road here, so to speak. But we're watching some very important things take place. Some very important things. If you know the Bible, if you know the prophecies, if you understand, if you've read Ellen White, especially some of the things that are pertinent about what's happening with our Constitution. This nation will yet repudiate every principle of our Constitution and Republican form of government. It's being spoken on TV day by day right now. We want to change the Constitution. We want to change the laws. We want to do away with. How do I do this without getting into trouble? When I was a teenager and becoming an Adventist Christian, I was told several times, this is before I met the what do you call the board where they drafted the drafting board? I was told several times, well, now that you're a Seventh-day Adventist, you can't bear arms. And it took me a little while to figure out what bearing arms meant. Anyhow, the nearer I got to 18 in the draft board, the more I was hearing, you can't bear arms. So when you go to the draft board, you tell them you're a conscientious objector and you can't bear arms. Well, I had a problem with that. And I want to tell you what my problem was. It still is. When the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, it took several weeks, actually a few months, for us to refloat some of these ships that were sunk. And get enough men together and enough arms and guns and whatever together that we went to Guadalcanal in the South Pacific. Why were we going to go there? Because that's where the Japanese had pushed. That's the last place they were pushing until the next push. And Australia was the next place to be. And so the begging came from the powers in the South Pacific and the powers wherever and said, You've got to stop the Japanese at Guadalcanal. You've got to stop the Japanese. If they get past there, we're going to lose Australia. We're going to lose New Zealand. We're going to lose all the islands of the Pacific. So it happened to be at such a time in my family's lives that I had two uncles who were in the Marine Corps. One of them was sent to Guadalcanal. The other one would get through 2 or 3 Pacific campaigns and finally get to Iwo Jima, and he would have the back of his head blown off. Now, I don't mind telling you, as I read the history of Guadalcanal and the Japanese pushing all across half the world, they had planes. You could fly 100 miles an hour faster than any planes we had. They had battleships that outgunned any battleship we had. And most of our battleships were sunk at Pearl Harbor and had to be, resurrected, 2 or 3 of them, 4 or 5. This is how I feel about keeping and bearing arms. I am so thankful that my uncle lived through and had enough presence of mind when I got to hear his story firsthand to tell what happened and how the Japanese were stopped at Guadalcanal. This is how they did it. They sent word by internet to the nearest bakery, and they said, "Send us cupcakes. We're going to throw cupcakes up in the air, and they will see that we're nice people, and they'll leave us alone." That works every time. Just throwing cupcakes up in the air. I'm listening to the news in the last 3 or 4 days, and we actually have groups talking about this is how you do it. You take away all guns. Cupcakes work every time. So I'm back to, we're talking about keeping and bearing arms, and we're talking about Seventh-day Adventists as being conscientious objectors. So when I went into the draft board, I had been urged by my Adventist friends and a pastor or two, now you tell them when you get in there that you do not want to bear arms. So I went into the draft board very hesitant, rather fearful actually, because I knew somebody in there was going to ask me, "Now, what church did you say you belong to?" I was trembling because I was torn between the answer that would make the church happy and the answer that would make me happy. You understand? I was caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. Have you ever been there? That's where we're all going. That's where we're all going. Now, I would like to think that it's never necessary to keep and bear arms. But I had a professor at Southern Missionary College who spent years, 20, 30 years, as a missionary, our missionary, in China. We were in a class there at Southern Missionary College, and somebody said, "Elder, tell us about your experience in China." Yeah, he said, "My trusty shotgun got us through." I thought, wait just a minute. He said, "You didn't have a gun? You didn't have a long time to live." There were bandits on every road, behind every tree. They were forced there because of the Japanese invasion and all the things that go on in war. What's going to be when you and I are faced with making decisions that are against what the government says, whether it's the government of the government or the government of the church? You understand what I'm asking? What do you do? Well, does it help to make up your mind ahead of time? Jesus said, sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. You don't need to rehearse all the time the bad things, but you need to understand that times of decision are just ahead of us. And what are we deciding? I think you understand what I'm asking. I went into the draft board, listen, and everything that I had heard was true. There was a mean old woman in there. She was mean to look at. She was mean sounding. And when I came in, this lady sitting behind the desk and me, when I came in, and she says, and what's your name? Charles Wheeling. And what are you all about? I said, well, I'm trying to go to school. School? Where are you going to school? To Southern Missionary College. The countenance of this woman changed instantaneously. Southern Missionary College. I didn't say a thing about keeping and bearing arms or not keeping and bearing arms. I just said, I want to be a preacher. I want to go and study at Southern Missionary College. And where is Southern Missionary College? I said, it's near Chattanooga, Tennessee. She scribbled something. She called me over and she said, hand this to the right people. This is what she said to me before I walked out the door. I know God is going to help you and bless you. Guess what? I didn't have to say I'll never carry a gun. You understand that things could have gone the wrong way very quickly if somebody was not in control of that conversation, and I wasn't in control. It was the Spirit of God in control. And I recognized it at the very moment it was happening. I did not know what she wrote down. I got out the door, and here's about 3 or 4 buddies from high school, my age. We're all in the draft board lining up. And this one guy said to me, I can't even remember his name, he said to me, and what did you get? And I said, I don't know. Do you know what that means? He said, buddy, they'll have to bomb Washington, D.C. before you go. Do you understand that I'm still alive to this day because of something that happened that day? You think I don't know? Because I saw it, I heard it, I experienced it. I know what God can do if He wills to do it. So one more time, Judy and I got married. Was it the 30th of June? 1963? Yeah. We were married, and we had that event on the highway on the way back to school that we had to pull over and take everything out of the car to undo the wiring on a brand new Volkswagen. And that's when an automobile with 6 of the ugliest looking characters you ever laid eyes on pulled up right behind us. I saw it and I trembled. Judy saw it in the rearview mirror and she trembled. I'm trying to bark orders to Judy, lock the doors, roll the windows up and lock the doors. What good would that do? We were in the middle of nowhere. That's when God sent a highway patrolman from the other direction. You listening? Just as 2 of those 6 men or 4 men, whatever it was in that car, it was a carload. Just at the time those 2 were approaching the rear bumper of our car, the highway patrolman pulled off into the middle of the road, middle of the median between two lanes, north and south, east and west, threw the door open and said, "You need help? You need some help over there?" "Yes, sir, we sure do." Now, what did that event just tell me? What does it tell me to this day? That God had some plan, something in store, something in mind that I didn't understand and wouldn't for years. So what does this have to do with you and me and us? I'm telling you, if God can do it for us, He can do it for you. And He has promised to pour out His Spirit on how much flesh? Ooh, does that include you and me and our families? And the answer is yes, yes, yes. Well, what I really wanted to say, and I'm going to close, what I really wanted to say is our interpretations as a denomination are just that, interpretations as a denomination. Just because we don't have everything exactly right doesn't mean we're bad people. If we have everything exactly right, it does not mean we're good people. It just means we've studied so far, understood so far, and we're waiting for God to do the rest. That's where we are. Father in heaven, the news is the news, and the news is parroting the Bible, saying the things that were written long ago. They're coming to pass before our very eyes and ears. We have a ministry that you have given us, you have assigned us. We have seen miracles now for more than 35 years. Miracles, miracles. No way to account for these things, and they're still going on. Tony said, present these things and these needs. I'm sure God will touch some heart. We pray God will touch many hearts, including our own, again and again and again. We thank you for every evidence that the end is nearing. And we see the evidence. If we know the Word, we see the evidence. And we're waiting for you to draw back the curtain, pour out your Spirit, and let us see and hear what we have been waiting so long to see and hear. We thank you for this humble ministry, all that it represents, and all that it will represent in the days and weeks to come. We're waiting, Lord, for you to work. Your servant Ellen said, you will bear your mighty arm when the time comes, and it will be seen that God has taken the reins in his own hands. We're waiting, we're trusting, we're praying, and we're asking for these blessings and more in Jesus' name. Amen.